Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Grant. I'm going to read you a story. And we've been making connections. We've been making connections that are text to self. And that is when we read a book and it reminds us about our life or something that happened to us. And we have been learning about making connections with text to text. And that's comparing two different books or a few different books. If I read a book and it reminds me of something that happened in another book. And we've been talking about making connections from text to world, which is things that are happening in the world, in the news, things around us, and that's what the story reminds us of. So I want you to listen to this book called The Relatives Came. It's written by Cynthia Rylant, illustrated by Stephen Gamble. Let's see what kind of connections we can make. Oh, and this has a Caldecott honor medal as well. The relatives came. Well, already I can connect with the illustration. Traveling and car is packed with bags and suitcases and the feelings of excitement and happiness. And there's a suitcase. So it reminds me a lot of getting ready and excited for either someone's coming to visit or I'm going somewhere. It was in the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They left when their grapes were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. They had an old station wagon that smelled like a real car, and in it they put an ice chest full of soda pop and some boxes of crackers and some bologna sandwiches, and up they came from Virginia. They left at 4 a.m. when it was still dark, before even the birds were awake. Did you ever leave that early to get somewhere, vacation or visiting someone? They drove all day long and into the night, and while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains, and they thought about their almost purple grapes back home. They thought about Virginia, but they thought about us too, waiting for them. So now we know the relatives are coming to visit from far away. So they drank up all their pop, that's soda in the South, and ate up all their crackers and traveled up all those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. Oh, look, they're running to see their relatives. I know that feeling. Do you? Then it was hugging time. Talk about hugging. Oh, look at that. Those relatives just passed us all around their car, pulling us against their wrinkled Virginia clothes, crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. Oh, such good feelings to see each other. Then it was into the house and so much laughing and shining faces and hugging in the doorways. You'd have to go, though, at least 4 different hugs to get from the kitchen to the front room. Those relatives. The good feelings and the hugs and the laughter continue. Just the beginning. And finally, after a big supper, 2 or 3 times around until we all got a turn at the table, there was quiet talk and we were in 2s and 3s throughout the house. That reminds me of holidays and having guests over, maybe Thanksgiving. Things quiet down a little, But then people break off in smaller groups and have nice talks. The relatives weren't particular about beds, which was good since there weren't any extras. So a few squeezed in with us, and the rest slept on the floor, some with their arms thrown over the closest person, or some with an arm across one person and a leg across another. They don't care. It was different going to sleep with all that new breathing in the house. A lot of people, a lot of guests. The relatives stayed for weeks and weeks. They helped us tend the garden and they fixed any broken things they could find. So helpful. They ate up all our strawberries and melons. They promised that we could eat up all their grapes and peaches when we came to Virginia. I think they didn't mind. I think they were happy to share. Looks like they're making some music, just continuing the good visit. But none of us thought about Virginia much. We were so busy hugging and eating and breathing together. Finally, after a long time, the relatives loaded up their ice chest and headed back to Virginia at 4 a.m. We stood there in our pajamas and waved them off into the dark. We watched the relatives disappear down the road. Then we crawled back into our beds that felt too big and too quiet, and we fell asleep. They're saying goodbye and watching them go home. And the relatives drove on all day long and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains. And they thought about their dark purple grapes waiting at home in Virginia. But they thought about us too, missing them. And they missed us. It's a long drive back. A lot of good feelings. I remember those feelings. Feeling tired, but so happy and loved. And when they were finally home in Virginia, they crawled into their silent, soft beds and dreamed about the next summer. Oh, they look forward to returning to their relatives. The end. They're the grapes. So many parts of this book reminded me of my life. So I was able to make text to self connections a lot with this book. Could you?